Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. Well, Governor Eric Holcomb and Indiana Secretary of Commerce Jim Schellinger have returned from their second Trans-Pacific trip in less than a month. First it was Japan and South Korea, then a trip to China, and finally India. The delegation met with business, government, academic leaders at each stop. Why the increased interest in global markets? Well, to answer that question, I'm pleased to be joined by Indiana Secretary of Commerce Jim Schellinger. As always, Jim, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Gary.
We'll get right to it. A lot of travel, a lot of miles visiting in those destinations. Interesting insights you have. You talked about a meeting with Prime Minister Modi of India, yes, which really was kind of an exclusive opportunity. Talk about that, the discussion, and what went on between the governor, you, and the Prime Minister.
The governor is laser focused on taking Indiana to the world and bringing the world to Indiana every day. And he says the winners are the ones that show up to play. So we were granted an audience with Prime Minister Modi, and we were taken back at how well he knew Indiana. And of course, he coined the governor's phrase, you can't even spell Indiana if you don't start with India. But he knew our background, he knew our educational background, he knew our history of sports statewide, and he basically campaigned on three things. The first thing was on expanding their cultural reach, their educational reach, and also on sports as a health thing. They have 1.3 billion people in the country, and he wants to be more than just a cricket state. So he basically asked the governor if Indiana would partner with all of our different leaders in sports, college and professional, amateur sports, if we would partner with him, knowing that we get the NBA All-Star, we have the NCAA here, partner with them specifically to help him develop his vision for India in sports, which is probably the highest honor we could get. And I thank a lot of the city leaders and state leaders that had that vision back in the 80s, which he pointed out.
Yeah, interesting. And I think reflective of Indiana's growing global profile, not just in India, but the reception you've gotten in some of these other countries kind of brought that home as well.
Magnificent. And you know, it's interesting, you know, everywhere we went, of course, in the Asian countries of South Korea and Japan and China and India, there are issues, there are challenging issues economically. And we talked about, we always embrace the opportunities when we have really prosperous collaborative times, and we endure the difficulties and the challenges of when we have economic times like we are today. But as a global community, we know this is all going to work out, and every one of them thought it was very significant that the governor took the time to come during these times.
Talk about deals coming. You know, these trips, a lot of it's relationship building, you know, for existing companies you already have doing business here in the state, but also new relationships as well, as you look at the potential for new investment, new companies coming out of them.
Yeah, we had over 75 meetings, and about 25% of those was for government and embassy people. The rest were for businesses. We met with businesses investing in Indiana to thank them. They had 49 other choices. We met with our Indiana businesses overseas, but we always bring back trips. We'll bring back 3, 4, 5 trips from this. We just recently announced Gordon Foods yesterday, and Gordon Foods is a company in Westfield, 400 jobs, $160 million capex. Schellinger, we visited with Hitachi. They told us when we were there they were going to increase Schellinger up in northwest Indiana. eHealth, when we visited California, they made the announcement a week later, 500 new employees at a $10 million cap up in upper north side of Indianapolis. And Toyota Princeton, when we were in Toyota having dinner at Toyota headquarters, they announced they were going to expand the Princeton plant by 600 people and put a $1 billion investment. Yeah. So when we show up, our batting average soars.
Yeah, so these trips, and you took along with you a number of mayors and other representatives from around the state, these are of increasing importance when it comes to economic development. It's not just focused here on Indiana, the Midwest, the U.S., but really the globe.
Absolutely. We are a global economy, and the world gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and so we hit all 49 other states. Sometimes we act as a nation. Sometimes we act as individual states, and this is a full contact sport. And I go all over the country to the other 49 and all around the world. Because again, we want to build our state economically and from workforce outside in. Gary, we had 31,800 people migrate to Indiana last year for jobs. It's the first time, it's 2 years in a row we've had in-migration, but 31,800 to come for our workforce program.
And good to see that those numbers turn around. Very, very important. Very quickly, Routes America Conference is coming up. The possibility, 50-plus nonstops now at the airport, a record number, but you really feel that this really big conference can potentially lead to maybe more activity.
This is transformational. To have over 1,000 people come, route planners from 80 airlines, 300 international airports, and 50 tourism authorities. They're all going to come to the #1 airport in North America, go to the #1 convention center, and I think it's fair to say that we're in negotiations right now for 4 additional nonstop direct flights overseas.
All right, well, we'll follow up with that, on you with that as well. Secretary of Commerce Jim Schellinger, as always, thanks for joining us. Go home and get some rest.
Thank you, Gary.
Talk to you.